Welcome to the Kevin Clancy Show. I've been in this game over a decade, and I knew I needed a place where I could run wild on my own solo podcast, where I tell personal stories, I deep dive into conspiracy theories, we rip through the current events of the day, and we do sit-down conversations with the most interesting people on the internet. Make sure you click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. What's up, you mutts? It's another episode of the Kevin Clancy Show coming to you live from Barstool HQ. It's me here, along with, of course, my man Za behind the glass, along with Nikki Hams. We got my super producer team back there. We got a whole lot to get into. I spent the morning driving in. I was listening to Eddie and Portnoy fighting each other about who has the best media presence, who has the best influencers and whatnot in the game today. So I wanted to go through who I think are the biggest names in the game right now. We got to talk about what's going on in the golf world. I fucking love what's going on in the golf world. This shit it's like straight out of a movie. It's like fantasy golf, and it's come to life. It's wild what the Saudi Arabians are doing. There's some more Johnny Depp news. There's a whole bunch to get into. I do want to start. I don't want it to be a somber episode, but I was on my soapbox a couple weeks ago, and we were all getting emotional about everything that happened in Uvalde. And then, as I said was going to happen, nothing changes, and we just go back to our regular way of life. But I have been getting hit with a zillion comments from people who are against what I was saying, which is insane, again, as always, to be against the death of children. But in an effort to not, just forget about it and move on and never bring anything up anymore, I did see yesterday Matthew McConaughey at the White House. I didn't realize McConaughey's from Uvalde. That's wild. That's his hometown.
I thought he was Australian.
No. Yeah, he's a Texas boy. Who's Australian? That's funny. That
Russell Crowe, right?
Yeah,
Russell Crowe's Australian.
You thought that's just a funny thing.
Dead ass. I thought he was dead ass Australian, straight from Perth.
Nah, he's a Texas boy, and crazy enough, unfortunately, from Uvalde. And so, McConaughey's always weird when he does these speeches and shit, because they're awesome. But just like any other actor, when they do something, I'm like, are you acting? You know what I mean? Like, that's what you do for a living. So you're shedding a tear, or you're getting all passionate, and it's like, but is this genuine? In this case, it did sound very genuine, and he was talking about a topic that is very touchy, very hard to navigate, but I do feel like I wanted to put my opinion out there on that, since I was talking so impassioned about it a couple weeks ago. But this was McConaughey talking about, unfortunately, what the aftermath of that scene in Uvalde looked like, and what he, and how they're handling the coverage of the event here. Can we pull that clip up?
They wore green high-top Converse with a heart she had hand-drawn on the right toe, because they represented her love of nature. Camilla's got these shoes. Can you show these shoes, please? Wore these every day. Green Converse with a heart on the right toe. These are the same green Converse on her feet that turned out to be the only clear evidence that could identify her after the shooting. How about that? Maybe they wrote a letter.
That's good. That's fine. The fact that they're identifying the kids by the shoes that they wore is one of the most heartbreaking, little facts to come out of this whole thing. And I know it's a weird territory when it comes to how the media should cover it and what the news should put out there. And I know there's a super extremely fine line between fear-mongering and gun and violence porn and exploiting death and the family grieving and all that. But I do really, we do everything the same way and nothing ever changes. And so in my mind, I genuinely think, and it would have to all be with the permission of the families, and everyone would have to be okay with it. But I really think if you showed pictures and footage from that crime scene, I think it would make a difference. I think if, as horrific as it is to hear about, if people saw what that classroom looked like, and if you saw what an AR does to a 7-year-old little girl, a 9-year-old boy, I think there's the gun nuts who would be like, those pictures are fake. This isn't real. And they would go about their business and they would never change. They're the people who are already on board with it. But there are people in the middle who I think are like either, I own a gun myself, but I want more regulation, or I own a gun, but I wouldn't turn mine in, or where, there's people in that middle area where if you saw a child blown apart, when you hear that they're like, one body part was over here, one body part was over there, and we couldn't tell what they looked like. We didn't know who they were because they were ripped apart. The only way I knew it was my daughter was because of the green shoes. I think that makes a difference. I think there would be people who would be like, holy shit. And we've seen it time and time again in much less, well, I don't want to compare, how tragic one thing is to another, but, we've seen in sports how you hear like a story about domestic violence, and you read it, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And then when you see it, like in Ray Rice's situation, things became a lot more serious. Most recently, I don't even remember who it was, where the guy was throwing the woman, like choke slamming her down, and the baby was in the bouncer. And when you see these things, people demand a lot more action. And I'm sure there are parents who don't want their kids out there and wouldn't want to see that and wouldn't want that on the news every 2 seconds. So what can you do? I'm sure it's up to them. But I just, when people say, what would you do? Well, what's your plan? What would you do different? If possible, if it was allowed, if everyone was on board, that's something I would do. Because if the news story of what happened to the kids doesn't move the needle for you, that's sick enough as is. But maybe seeing like a classroom covered in blood with body parts everywhere where you can't identify faces would. And I know that's harsh, and I know I'm sure there's a bunch of people who disagree with me in that regard, but I do think that's something that, if we just keep talking about it and covering it the same way, it's just going to keep happening because we're just going to keep doing the same things. So, if Sandy Hook, we saw the massacre, if we see what happened in Uvalde, I wonder if that would change things. But it's probably something that won't ever happen, but it is something that I think, if we have to do things differently, that might be the way to do it. And I think that's, what McConaughey was talking about there is, I think there's a different way to approach it. So anyway, on to lighter topics. I don't want it to be all doom and gloom, but we'll open up the phone lines too if you do want to talk about that. 888-786-6522. That's up there on the screen if you're watching. Glad to take your calls on that. But like I said, I was driving in listening to Eddie and Dave debate, which is like those two, when they get going, man, it's like who's on first, what's on second, when they don't understand the terms of their own debates and arguments and shit like that.
This last episode was something.
Oh, man. It was it's one of those things. I'm new to listening to podcasts. I say I'm new. It's actually been probably like a year or two now. But in the grand scheme of things, that's new considering I've been doing one for a decade. And so I'm relatively new to the phenomenon of when you're listening to a podcast or a show and you're screaming at your phone or at your car because you know the answer or you know what one person means. And I'm like, so this debate, Dave said that he thinks that Barstool has the best roster of media influencers and personalities. And he expanded it to if you started your career at Barstool. So that includes McAfee and that includes Alex Cooper, which is a pretty big asterisk, to be honest. Like, they're not at Barstool anymore, but he wanted it to be clear like that's where they started. And so they were going through the different entities in the landscape, in the industry. And Eddie brought up Charles Barkley and TNT and how Charles is just a phenomenon. And Eddie's point was basically like, I'll take TNT because Charles is worth like 3 people. And Dave was like, well, that doesn't count. You have to draft like all 6. I think what Eddie was saying is that like Charles Barkley is like Shaq in Orlando. It's like one guy. That team wasn't good. They had Shaq and Penny, and that's all they needed. So it doesn't matter who else you draft. Dave was like, can you draft 6 guys? It doesn't matter who the other 5 are on the TNT team, according to Eddie, because Charles Barkley is like a dominant force. That's all he was saying. But those two were just going back and forth at it. It was very funny listening to those two. As good as the as good as the topic was. Listening to those two kind of go at each other was just as entertaining. But it does bring up an interesting question of who is the biggest influencer. I hate the word, but like the word influential is kind of the key here because there's fame and there's popularity and then there's influence. And so one of the debates boiled down to, as Eddie took Charles Barkley, Dave was on the Alex Cooper train, which is a very interesting debate about, who. It's a wild one. The fact that Charles Barkley and Alex Cooper are being included in the same sentence in a debate is interesting. It's always interesting when you do like different generation gaps too, because you have people from one era who cannot even comprehend the idea that you think Alex Cooper is bigger than the Chuck Wagon, the round mound of rebounds, Sir Charles. And then you have basketball fans and then you have new age fans who are like, I don't even know who Charles Barkley is. And it's this phenomenon that we can't seem to grasp as a new society. I sat down with Josh Richards, who's Dave's co-host on BFFs, and we were talking about the game they usually play on BFFs where it's like young people don't know people from the older generation, and old people don't know the new people from the young generation, and they cannot reconcile it. The fact that, Josh Richards didn't know who Deion Sanders was, like, bothered people. The fact that Brianna didn't know who, John Mayer or Dave Matthews was or something. What do you mean? It's like, what do you mean? She didn't grow up listening to them. They don't know who it is, the same way that you don't know their famous YouTubers and TikTokers and the music they listen to. It's just how time and generational gaps work. But in the case of Alex Cooper and Charles Barkley, it's an interesting one. I thought that was to me, that's probably like a 50-50 slobber knocker in the sense of like Alex has young people and chicks on lock. Charles Barkley has the older generation, anybody watching basketball now, and more of like a broader appeal on the internet because he's going viral all the time. He's reaching it to regular news. He's reaching it to regular headlines. And, Alex Cooper will do a podcast and have millions of listeners, and she can move $1 million worth of merch in like a night. And so in that regard, she's like instant internet influence. But I would imagine you have Charles Barkley on like the TNT panel, and that allows them to sell like to fucking Delta and Budweiser and like, these major names. And so it's kind of like two different ways to go about it of, are you looking for old school mass appeal, classic fame?
Is it Capital One that he does with all the guys where it's like, how much fucking money are they getting for that? But they're probably getting a ton of people to sign up for it.
You know what? That's a question that's like advertising in general. It's like, how often do you think that did you sign up for a bank because of a commercial?
I don't think that those advertisers that pay big money to people, I don't think it's ever worth it.
But there's got to be like some research that proves it, right?
I think it's more just tradition. At a point in time in life, yes, maybe. But what I've noticed from culture here is you just can't. So, like, for example, the immigration system hasn't changed since 1970. Shit just doesn't change. That's the thing.
Meaning what? Like,
no, as in, like, so moving away from that system of overpaying people. I see what you mean. Haven't moved on. From
I think it's just like fear, the old way of doing things, and fear of, well, if we don't have a Super Bowl commercial, what happens then? What if all of a sudden, people don't buy Budweiser? What if they don't, they do buy a competitor because of that 30-second commercial? I think I'm waiting for the wave of people like my age to get old enough to become CEOs and the decision makers who just say, are you fucking nuts? Forget about the Super Bowl commercial. Take all that money and give it to an Alex Cooper.
And instead of one fucking commercial, you have, a salary. Well, that's probably not even enough for her, but give it to the next girl up who, give them a couple $1 million for a 30-second spot. Instead, you give it to a salary for a new person who has an entire demographic on lock.
I have noticed they are figuring that out a bit, where they're hiring those TikTok micro influencers, probably paying them pennies or just inviting them and being like, "Hey, come to the premiere," and then they cover it for free.
That's what's up. That's brilliant. You have this free street team giving you all the marketing you need rather than the old traditional forms. But then, like I said, I can understand the idea of Alex Cooper can put a sweatshirt on sale and I think legitimately make like $1 million overnight, right? But then there are people, if you're trying to sell Alex Cooper because of her edginess and talking about sex and all that shit, there's certain clients and money that she can't touch, where maybe, TNT says, Charles Barkley, we have a 10-year deal with Capital One or some shit worth hundreds of millions of dollars because of him. There's that old media that is still big money that matters. But I feel like, who would you take?
I don't think it's even a question.
Did you take Alex?
Nowhere near. Yeah. The Barkley, the only people that really know. So the thing is, Barkley now is exploding because of virality.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Before virality, the only people that knew him were basketball fans.
Right, but I mean, that's a huge but. You know what I mean? Like,
sex sells, though.
So
sex sells. Yes. Alex Cooper is massive.
Sex sells. I think sports does in a way too, though, and I think it all depends on what demo you want. Like, you're not gonna get young girls. You will get. I mean, Chuck goes viral on TNT all the time now. So you will. He does have internet appeal. He does have. If you watch basketball, if you're young and you watch, Steph Curry and all them, you're also watching Chuck. You don't know him as a basketball player, but the old heads do. Some of he bridges a little bit of the gap, whereas Alex just dominates her one. What I will say about Alex. And I obviously run in very different circles, and it's more about Call Her Daddy and not necessarily her personally, although I guess, it's one and the same. But almost exclusively, the girls that I know that listen to Call Her Daddy, it was like a phase. They were like, I tuned in, I wanted to see what it was about.
Oh, okay.
I got it, I understood it, liked some of it, didn't like some of it, and I don't know, none of the people who I run with, but that's,
was it
moms and older, 30 plus or late 20s. Like, I don't know if they stick around as long as probably the younger generation does. Those girls probably listen to her week in, week out, every single episode, whereas a lot of people, I think my age, kind of like, maybe when they found it, they bought the merch, they loved the stories, they loved the slogans and the phrases, and then once you've had your fill of that, like, how many more times can you listen to that and they move on?
Do you think that might have a bit to do with because the show changing, maybe?
I don't, I feel like I see less of it once she left Barstool, but that's, of course, because everything I follow and everything I do is in the Barstool world. I see that she still gets the major guests. It just feels, same thing like kind of with Jenna Marbles. Like, when she left Barstool, every video she did still got 10 million views, and she was still a millionaire out there in L.A. and a big influencer. But I was like, I don't see it anymore. And that's, very insular, and we're always in our bubble here. But I do believe I have a pretty good, follow, who I follow and what my timeline looks like and what, as far as what my finger on the pulse is. It's like it used to be more, did you hear what happened on Call Her Daddy or what they said or what they did? And then I think it was like revolutionary, and then it kind of became okay, like, now you're part of it. Now we know that's you can't have, it can't be news every single time Alex Cooper says something crazy, inflammatory, sexual, whatever. It's just because now we know that's what she does, and that's, people are used to that. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. I haven't seen much of her stuff on social. Does she has an exclusive deal with Spotify, right?
Yeah. So she moved to Spotify, but I don't know if that, does that allow, can she put clips out, social clips, promotion? Yeah. That's part of her deal. I know Rogan had something that was like,
he can do it later on.
Yeah,
right?
and I think clips were allowed
on his YouTube.
Yeah. So that got me thinking about, just in general, the strongest groups in media. And I was surprised to not hear from Eddie, because I know he knows this realm well. Dave, not as much. I think that right now, if I had to pick one team, one company, one brand, one whatever you want to call it. Number one pick right now, probably in my mind by a mile, would be Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer. I would take the two Bears team over anybody in media right now. I think they are about to, they already are, but I think they are about to blow it out of the fucking water. And I think there's one thing when we do those, do you know the young person versus do you know the old person, and either side has no idea. There's always one thing that plays right down the middle, and both generations know, and that's usually comedy. Usually everybody knows who Chris Rock was, Eddie Murphy was, is, who Dave Chappelle is, and all those guys. Comedy seems to bridge white, black, young, old, guy, girl. A lot of, I guess comedy still, a lot of male comics will still skew male, but for the most part, to me, that's where you get everybody. I mean, when Dave Chappelle puts out a new special, when Dave Chappelle says something, everybody knows it. Everybody knows who he is. They're timeless. There's no prime necessarily where it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, they do have a prime, but it's not like their body ages out of it and they stop doing it. You get decades worth of doing it. If you knew the sort of money and numbers that Two Bears was pulling in, they are like right there with Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan is put on this pedestal of being like this godfather, and I understand why, but what Tom and Bert are doing is right there with no exclusivity issues. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want. They get it from podcasting. They get their money from touring. They have Two Bears as like a company the same way Barstool does. So they're get into Two Bears racing. They'll probably get into Two Bears sports, this and that. And like,
dude, when the machine drops and Bert becomes
movies,
like a family
right?
face,
I mean,
like that's gonna be unreal. Like,
and it's already. I mean, the numbers I've heard floating around are just like insane amounts of downloads and money and power and influence. And I think it touches absolutely everybody in a way that's like, it also doesn't, as great as Alex is, there are people who hate them. Like, I don't think anybody hates Tom and Bert or a lot of these comedians. They're the people who, the same people who hate Barstool for like their subject matter and shit like that. But even if you don't like their comedy, even if like you think other comics are funnier than them, you're like, oh yeah, but they're stand-ups. I saw their special. I've heard their podcast. There's not much malice there because they just kind of do their thing. To me, that was the one thing that they both overlooked was the comedy and podcast like combination. I feel like I would go them one. I would probably do Dave two. I feel like Rogan was at his peak powers right before he did the Spotify deal. So I feel like, and then he had a lot of that controversy. So I think he was in the news a lot, but I think his peak was right before that. Then you got to go like Cooper. I think Brianna's going to be a huge one coming up. I don't think she's there yet, but I think Bri will be a monster. But I think, and then their debate starts to kind of skew more back towards sports, because I think that McAfee, I think in sports it's McAfee and Biz. Yeah. I think McAfee is the gold standard. Biz is kind of the McAfee of hockey. But those two own that. But yeah, I mean, in some sort of order, I would go the Two Bears guys, Portnoy, Rogan, Cooper, McAfee, Biz, and Witt. And then, then you start to, split into like, there's obviously a ton of podcasts and a ton of influencers. You got to get into the TikTok world. But I think those are like the major monster players where I guess you got to throw in the TikTok girls too, right? Yeah. The difference is like those TikTok people can move merch and shit as well. Like they do a meet and greet. They sell tickets. Because you can be famous.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. Popularity and influence. So, like for example,
very different.
Influential wise, I mean, out of everyone you've mentioned, the most influential I have seen personally here. I mean, they could be someone else, but the one I've experienced, Dave.
Yeah,
Dave has
because
people.
Dave does all of it from garners the headlines of fame and popularity, but also you'll buy his shirt, you'll buy his ticket. You'll listen to his podcast.
Dave will tell you to go jump into the Hudson River, and you wouldn't even question. He'll get 100 motherfuckers. I mean,
that's because he's a cult leader.
Yeah, yeah. So
there's famous people, there's influential people, and then there's cult leaders, and that's what Dave has. The only reason I would I would give an edge to Tom and Bert and kind of like the Rogan world is because those guys move tickets.
They do the same thing too.
They can draw. Tom and Bert are on the verge, if not already, selling out arenas. Yeah. I mean, the tour that Tom put together, he has like literally everyone in the world is watching him and listening to him and buying his tickets and buying his merch. And so I feel like they have that influence as well.
Is he still doing where he does shows completely in Spanish too, like a whole second hour?
I don't know if he's doing. Yes, that's the other thing. He gets the whole.
Wait, he speaks Spanish?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
He's South American. I think it's Peru is where his family's from. Yeah. So he speaks Spanish fluently. So he does a podcast in Spanish. He does entire shows in Spanish. I mean, they are, and Tom is Bert is obviously this huge personality, and you see him everywhere, and he's always kind of, he's not obnoxiously like flaunting it in your face, but you see it because he's this spectacle. Tom is just laying in the cut, calm as can be, family man at home, wife and kids, and also is like the most influential person on the planet.
Hold on, those are the cats that said that you were the home of East Coast comedians or whatever, unsolicited.
Yeah,
I saw that
Bert
clip.
said that, and so of course I'm biased because I love these guys and they've been good to me, but it's also because I think they're the gold standard for it now, and it's weird because like Rogan got put on this pedestal, and it's probably because everyone just assumes it still is Rogan, and it will, as long as Rogan is out, it will always be Rogan, but there's no reason why that can't be eclipsed. I think Joe Rogan is a one-man operation, and Two Bears is kind of being like a Barstool. Like Bert wanted to do Two Bears like the college NIL deals the way that we did. He wants to do a racing team. Like he wants to become a business where you kind of slap the Two Bears tag on everything. So they've got a little bit of Barstool with them while having the stand-up comedy, while having the podcasting, doing the merch. They're a little bit of everything as well. And then and that's what I mean. I love it. To me, I wish I could do a podcast almost on covering this world the way people talk about sports, like the way people cover the NBA.
The comedians,
yeah, like who's the GOAT? Is it LeBron? Is it Durant? Is it Steph Curry? Blah blah blah. I would love to be out here like almost doing fantasy sports for comedy podcasts, influencer. Because to me, it's fascinating how many different realms, the McAfee and the biz and sports. You got the guys in comedy. You got the guys who are that I love. Our realm is like born straight from the internet. Like the comics have stand-up comedy as their first realm, and a lot of them were on TV, and a lot of them did acting and specials, and that's where they get their fame from. The athletes are athletes, so that's where they get their fame from when they retire or they kind of have the hybrid careers. Everybody kind of has their way that they got famous and then come to the internet. I love the fact that we come from the internet. Our fame is just from here. Like, what were you first? Regular dude. We just utilize the internet in a way to make our regular lives become something famous and interesting and popular and influential. That's why I think that we actually garner a lot of the influence. Where it's like, I'm not gonna listen to what this like famous person tells me to buy because like they don't fucking know, but they know that I'm living like a regular ass life. So if I tell you to wear this shirt because I don't sweat in it when I'm running around with my two kids or what, they're gonna be like, oh, that's fucking real. So I think there's a lot of value in just being born out of the internet and not having a previous career or a leg to stand on. I think it's weird to be in it. I think I've always said that part of the weird thing for me is like I don't want to do that. It's like I don't want to fanboy, but I am a fanboy of this. Like that is my interest, and it's like I'm also in that world. So when we have an interview or we see them or we talk to them, it's like we're contemporaries, but in my mind we're not at all. I'm still like looking at them like they're, like I said, athletes, where it's like who's the best and what career trajectory are they on? Who's the next coming up? Who's falling off? Like I almost analyze it the way I would look at sports, even though I'm like sort of halfway in it as well. Let's go to Justin in Connecticut talking about influencers. What's up, Justin?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I was just kind of wanted to point out, like, are you guys talking about specifically when you say media and like in influence? I think you could kind of look at it two ways. Like I know you're kind of focusing on YouTube there and like total number and like the impressions that people get. I think you can make an argument like versus notoriety versus total number of impressions that you get like online. So like there's that guy PewDiePie on YouTube.
Yep.
108 million subscribers.
For sure.
I was just like I listen to
that's
all the time. Like I couldn't tell you the first PewDiePie video, but like Two Bears One Cave has 1.1 subscribers, like 1.1 million. Like they pale in comparison.
But like, do you? So and maybe you know this. So I'm not saying this like I know. Like, do you know what PewDiePie looks like?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like oh, and I forgot the Paul brothers. The Paul brothers I think are stacked in like, you know, probably like top 5, top 10, top 7,
they
top
touch
8.
everything.
I would actually would
they're getting into like Alex.
I would probably
they
you know
might
what?
be Alex territory.
If
now.
I'm like redrafting that, I would probably put them like 3rd, 4th, 5th because they touch sports, they touch the internet, they touch podcasting, they do sex and entertainment, they do all of that, but they do have the boxing, they have the sports side of it. The only thing is they're more villains and they're still winning people over as opposed to people just they're beloved. But my point being, some of those YouTube guys for sure have to be considered. PewDiePie, I don't know how that works. I don't know. Is that one dude who just is at home with a fucking 100 million subscribers cashing checks? Is that a company? He
definitely has a team now, but I do know like all my younger siblings, they all know who they could spot him in a crowd.
Yeah,
easily. There's random people that like I've heard their name before that they're just like what
kind of videos does PewDiePie make?
I think he makes more like kid stuff and he does streaming.
Like
I think
let's
now
play or like let's go run out. Yeah, it's for younger audience.
So like young kids. All right, so that's a whole other world too. I don't know. Fucking Blippi.
Oh, that was Blippi.
Yeah. So Blippi is out here, cashing checks as well. That's a guy who you get the kids. You get the Wiggles and Coco Melon and that kind of shit. That fucking Emma and Alex and those motherfuckers, Wendy and Alex with that voice. Oh God, dude, I don't know what it is that those Asian YouTubes with the Asian families and the voices are like. Oh my God, I can't fucking take it anymore. That's a whole other thing. But
my niece
obviously,
and nephew will sit there and watch those for like 6 hours.
It's
straight.
nuts,
I don't
bro.
know what it is.
That voice, that sound is just grating. But yeah, then there's the strictly internet people, Mr. Beast. I don't even know some of them because I never used YouTube strictly. Like David Dobrik had it for a minute before he blew it and got canceled.
I think he's still.
Yeah, he's laying back. He's gonna come back.
I think in about 6 months.
That's a dude.
Full back.
That's a dude who had deals with like American Express and like like big fucking A-list blue chip companies that the older generation would have no idea who they are, but but what's important about influence is putting your face and your name on it, because I do think that there are probably channels on YouTube that have zillions of followers and subscribers that are more just like a name or a brand, and that's still definitely influential. But when you're talking about who would you take from that team, who nobody knows who that is. So that's the new school. Then you have the old school. I'm still taking Stephen A. Smith. Top 5, top 7. As I say this, I keep saying I have about 10 people in my top 5 right now. But you got Stephen A. Smith. I think JJ Redick's going to be a big one. I think Kevin Durant's going to be a big one. I think he's got a podcast now, and I think right now he's still kind of in his prime of basketball.
You think JJ Redick?
I think JJ Redick's going to be a big one.
I think he's too. So I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's too analytical.
So
we're looking for it. You can't pair him with Stephen A. Smith.
No.
That's where they.
I didn't mean to say it like that. I think he's newer in the like I guess I would say I'm seeing more of him. Like more clips of him are going viral where he dunks on Chris Russo or Skip Bayless. I think he speaks for the modern athlete, and I think what's cool about him is he's kind of one of the first dudes I think that I knew of who had the career while they're podcasting. That's why I also think Bustin' with the Boys does a great job. I think they're huge in the football world because they're still active in the game while podcasting about it. There's been a million retired athletes who then speak on it, but to be in the game at the same time, I don't think JJ Redick's going to be like Pat McAfee, because I also think that Redick's pretty clean cut, pretty much just delivers his takes, like you said, analytical.
Yeah, that's what
and I think you need to be more bombastic and over the top. But yeah, I mean, I've always said I knew it with Pat, man. I fucking knew it, and I'm not saying like that's a big, everybody knew it. But I was like, I would have done anything to keep that guy. If I was in management, I would have given them bank. I would have Brinks truck, whatever contract he wants, whatever deals he wants, knowing that wrestling was coming down the pike, knowing the football influence, and then just the general like comedy. I mean, he is, as a singular man, because Tom and Bert are two people. I think Dave and McAfee are like the only two like individual guys I would take that are just like, I mean, it's a one-man fucking operation. It's like they're the total linchpin of the whole thing. And he's got a great team with him out there in Indy, but it's his show for sure.
Someone just left a comment, and I'm looking. There is, I mean, the source is Lab Bible on it, but Mr. Beast's Squid Game video got more views than the actual show.
I believe that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that actually kind of makes sense when you think of like how many, if you get like Game of Thrones would get like 9 million people to watch an episode. And so, and there are plenty of viral videos that get into the 10 millions. You know what I mean? But it is funny to think of that regard. That Squid Game video was brilliant, man. That's the kind of shit. If I got big money, I would do things like that. Recreate shit like that. I think is like just what like concoct what people want to watch and just throw money at it to recreate it. That is.
Did you see the new one on Netflix? Which I'm so mad we didn't do this. Just the floor is lava. Whole game is just the floor is lava and people jumping on shit, falling in like this goo.
They made the Cake show too. Is it Cake? Is it a game show now?
I'm actually furious that that's got its second season and it's crazy. A meme from 2 years ago.
It's nuts. People I guess watch it. I can understand how things make it to like a show. Like how there is a show of Is It Cake, because that kind of mixes the Cake Boss world with the food, the Cooking Network, and all that shit. That's another whole realm that's big. And it's like, okay, let's try to capitalize and make this a TV show. But then the fact that it gets another season, it's like that wasn't just a fad. People actually want more of that. It also goes to show there's a lot of people who just want like passive, fucking easy viewing. They like games. They like contests. They like dumb shit like that. And
the one that pisses me off, the kids one. Your kids probably went through this. The fucking the Play-Doh, the one where they just show the hands. Someone playing with Play-Doh, but they're just showing the hands. Yep. That shit,
bro. Like slime,
literally just showing the hands.
Yeah, they're just popping balloons and squeezing slime and bouncing balls and squeezing paint, just like weird arts and crafts shit with hands that get billions of views, like legitimately billions. But again, those are people. It's like, aside from Blippi, I don't know who can you say is like the face of that. I don't know who to put on that. If there is one guy that dominates it, throw him in the list too. And then we've done this whole fucking thing for 40 minutes. Haven't even mentioned the gaming world. Then you have the gamers. You got fucking Ninja and Nick Merckx and those guys. I mean, we are living in a fascinating time of fame, popularity, influence, ability to earn in every realm, I love how much like the nerds inherited the earth, how much Marvel and comics and video games and all that shit that was, everybody did it, and then for whatever reason it becomes not cool because like athletes ruled the world, and then it was like, well, wait a minute. Fuck that. We have strength in numbers. There's billions of us that play these games and trade these cards and read these comics and watch these movies, and we have the money and the spending capability, and the clients are going to want us and our dollars, and so guess what? We rule the fucking world now. It's, for a minute there, I feel like sports kind of ran the world for 80s, 90s, 2000s kind of, it was a sports and music, right? Sports, music, movies. And now it's like, it's turned into everything, every hobby where there's so many fucking people in the world that every hobby can have millions of followers, billions of buyers, tens of millions.
Bro, I got a planes guy for you.
Yeah. The fact that people are watching, simulators, the fact that people are watching, card unboxings, openings, whatever the fuck. I mean, There is so much out there.
I've been noticing too a bunch of those, and I think it's probably like Stranger Things kind of made it cool. Like they're like D&D shops, like whole stores dedicated to just playing D&D, which I know existed before, but it's like I'm seeing them on main strips with like probably expensive fucking rent.
I have one like memory of trying to play Dungeons and Dragons with me, my brother, and my cousins, and it was just I was too young and it was too involved for me. But I'll shoot you straight. If I knew how to do it and had the time and the friends and all that shit, that's just awesome. Yeah. When people come up with these storylines and like they control the game, right? Like you roll and fight, but like they have it's like a choose your own adventure thing. Yeah, and when one person decides who wins and who does, like I love that. This stuff that, dude, the thing that Sal Vulcano was telling us on KFC Radio, we had Sal Vulcano from Impractical Jokers and just like stand up he was telling me about Street Wars. You ever heard of this?
I know, I miss you.
I was telling you yesterday. I played a little bit in college.
Street Wars. It's also called Assassin. It sounds like it started in New York. Now it's like worldwide in other cities and campuses. I think there's he said there's a few hundred people that sign up, and I think it goes for a month, 24/7. It's a game where you get assigned a person, and a person gets assigned you, and your job is to hunt your person down and shoot them with a water gun. And all the while, someone is trying to hunt you and do the same thing. It's almost like that movie Tag that came out, where the adults who are 24/7 playing tag for high stakes. Except you got a dossier. They give you a dossier on the person, where they live, what their name is, where they're from, where they hang out, like who their family is. And it's your job to tail them and try to find them. There are certain safe zones, like you're allowed to be at your work and not have to worry about it. You're allowed to be in your home. But the second you step off the block, you are fair game. Sal was telling us he once tailed a guy for 8 hours and went on a high-speed chase. Like the dude was in the car, realized what was going on, and was like weaving in and out of traffic. Sal staked him out of his apartment for hours, waited till the nighttime, got him, and at the end they throw this big party, and there's a winner, obviously. Like it keeps narrowing down after people get killed, and then there's one person, I think, who's like the lead assassin. And apparently it's been going on I've never heard of this. I can't believe I've never heard of this. I can't believe no one's been shot, by the way. Can't believe there hasn't been a scenario where there's two people on a high-speed chase or two people running through the streets pulling out water guns and getting fucking lit up by the police thinking it was a real scenario. I can't believe that hasn't happened. I can't believe I haven't heard about it. It's something I would have absolutely done when I was younger. If I was in the city and single and just living, and all of a sudden every time you're out, you can go out and have fun and shit, but you can also play spy games 24/7. That's fucking awesome. Where you're looking in the mirrors of the cars as you walk by to see if anyone's tailing you. You're checking your shadows. You're looking in the reflections. You're checking, who's on the train with you. You switch buses so that no one's following you. All that shit that you see in the movies, these people do for fun, for real. It's fucking insane. There's just so much shit that goes on. I used to play Magic the Gathering. It's one of those card games from the fantasy world of dragons and wizards and witches, and you're fighting, and you have total number of hit points and all that shit. And I fell off on it when I was I probably played it when I was in elementary school, middle school a little bit, and then as I got older I fell off. But I thought that fell off. I was like, oh yeah, remember Magic? That used to be big and now it's not. No, dude. Just because you aren't interested anymore doesn't mean that the billions of people playing it stopped. And so now that's a huge thing. There's just so much money and so many ways to do it. What do you got? What is that smirk on your face? I got something behind the glass.
Oh, it was meant to be some audio that came through, but it didn't. Is it coming through? Nah, it didn't come through. All right, Cousin Mike is on the line.
Cousin Mike?
On the line.
Yep. I haven't talked to him forever.
I was surprised. I was surprised when I heard his voice.
Is he there?
He's there. Cousin Mike.
Mike, how are you? Mr. Portnoy, what's going on?
Kevin.
How you doing?
Kevin.
Yeah.
You caught my attention. I was walking by I heard your program. I was walking by in my kitchen. Caught my attention.
Yeah.
And when I saw my buddy Za was on there, I mean, I love Za. I absolutely love Za.
He's one of the best in the biz.
A minute ago, we hadn't spoken in quite a while, and I missed that terribly. One of the nicest persons you could ever want to meet. That's my buddy Za.
100%, man. He's at the top of my list too.
And Kevin, the only thing, that sticks in my mind, every time I met you in person, you're much taller than I think you are.
You know, a lot of people say that, and I don't get why. Do I put off some sort of energy that I'm short? Because every time people meet me, they're like, whoa, you're tall. And I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because you're sitting all the time. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. You caught my attention as well as like I said with Zah, that I wanted to speak to him if I could, but I did, and I did just now. It was very nice because Zah and I, and on the show and everything, we had a nice relationship, and Zah got me out of a lot of technical situations that I was totally lost.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the best producers out here. He helped like every single show, everybody.
That's why I was shocked to hear him on the line. He didn't get my help.
Kevin, what you said this morning that caught my attention really did.
Uh-huh.
I hate to admit it, I'm 75 years old. I just turned 75. You just talked about some of the comedians.
Yeah.
Oh, and you said something which is very true. People, and the names you mentioned are people that I know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the younger people, you know who they are.
Yep.
And that says something about the staying power of those people you mentioned this morning. There was a list of people, but it was so true.
Yep.
So true. These people who had the real talent, I know who they are. You know who they are. I'm going to add another one. I don't think I heard it, who I've always said is my absolute idol as a human being is Dave Letterman.
Yep. What Letterman's done post Tonight Show with his show.
He is interviewing these people now who, when the interview starts, he really doesn't have any idea who they are. And he'll ask questions that shows he doesn't know who they are.
Yeah, can I ask you a question about Letterman? Because I was not a huge Letterman guy, and I think that his show is very popular, and he's earned this because he was so successful. But I think his show is so popular only because he gets the absolute best guests in the world. And obviously, that's part of the puzzle is that you can get these people to agree to come on your show. But I don't think what he does with them is necessarily all that, amazing. I think there's a lot of interviewers and people who can have good conversations. If you sat down with Obama and Jay-Z and Kim Kardashian and all these people, if they gave you access, I think that the show would be like the same level. But I guess that's
I don't agree with that.
You think that he's that good? You think he's that much better of a conversationalist?
When he had his show, every night,
mm-hmm.
he unquestionably was the best interviewer on television, better than anybody. And I'm biased because I absolutely. When he left the show, I want to tell you, I was depressed.
Yeah.
Because to me, and the question I'm talking about, he when he had his show, he was better than any news interviewer or anybody. I thought the questions that he would ask, and even the guests would somehow be set back because they were so the questions were so penetrating and things that you didn't hear in other places. Sure, he had the things on that he had to about what new movie you were in and all that crap.
Right.
But many times, he would get beyond that. And the thing about Letterman was and is, he knew when he was asking somebody that came on the show about their latest movie or something, he knew it was all bullshit.
Right.
He knew why they were on the show.
Right.
He knew they were on to promote what they were doing, and he was going to get by it. And even now, of course, some of the people he's interviewing on this show know. I'm telling you, they may be popular. Who's the woman that's so popular right now? And she's a hip hop star, and I just went blank on her name. He interviewed her. Okay. He barely knew. I'm telling you, he barely knew. You could tell by the questions.
Right.
He barely knew who she was, but the question, and she was taken aback by the question. And he takes these people on these little journeys.
Yep.
I wish I could remember her name, but I'll think of it as soon as I hang up. But you all know who she is. She's a hip hop star. You know where they ended up taking a journey to? Eleanor Roosevelt's home. I mean, it made no sense. It made no sense, but it was wonderful. And I'm talking about this hip hop star. She's one of the big ones. And she walked through I don't even know how they got to that.
I figured.
Is it Cardi B, Cousin Mike?
Yeah, I think it's Cardi B.
Cardi B, right?
Yeah.
Cardi B, thank you.
Yep.
Here's Cardi B and David Letterman at Eleanor Roosevelt's museum. I mean, what didn't make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean,
But it was wonderful.
Do you think that he was a better interviewer than Howard Stern?
Yes.
Because I know everybody puts him in the pantheon.
You know why? I'll tell you why. Especially in the early years, Howard's whole thing, shtick, was, women and the size of their breasts.
Right, very sex-oriented.
And that was Howard.
Right.
So that was the theme of Howard's show. He didn't change to be a better interview until many years later. Other than in the beginning, it was all about T&A. Letterman never had to rely on that.
Right.
Never. All right? A lot of times he would make remarks that were suggestive, but never as outright the way Howard Stern. Howard Stern became a poor man's David Letterman in the later years, I think. But yeah, I tell you something. I miss that, and I miss Letterman.
I miss you too.
I was gonna say, I feel like you miss these guys, but I think there's a bunch of people around here who miss you guys, because I know that the Cousins influence became such a thing with Barstool, man. It was such a staple and like such an inside part of the Barstool world. Cousin Mike, Cousin Murray, everybody cousin this, cousin that. It was definitely a good run you guys had.
About that, I always said to my son, and I believed it then and I believe it now, the demographic otherwise than our show, I never was convinced that, and even as we're speaking right now, we were so far outside the general demographic.
Right.
Barstool. And I understood and David used to say, well, I got a list of who's popular, how many listeners, and you people are beyond last. And, kind of, I wasn't shocked. Because it was
but it was a niche, there's two ways to be successful in this world. One of it is mass appeal, and the other is having that's like a small but very dedicated and engaged audience.
Can you exist in today's world, Kevin? Can you exist in today's world that's so competitive for viewers and one? Can you exist with that?
I mean, what you need is if you could have, You can have a few thousand people, but if all of them buy tickets and buy your shirts and use your promo codes and go to your sponsors, I'm sure you can have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and then into the millions of followers. But if they don't buy, the client stuff, I'm sure that they get happy when there's, a few hundred people that use the promo code every time I do an episode or an ad read or whatever. I'm not sure what the conversion numbers are, but I'm sure it's a pretty low number compared to how many people listen. But if you have a small engaged audience who always – that's what the part of the conversation we had today was talking about popularity versus influence. You can have a huge number of people, or you can have a small number of people that you can actually influence and they'll do everything you say. I think you can exist.
Well, I hate to hear that, because when we try to sell some shirts, other than my immediate family, and because of Murray's family, I think we sold 40 shirts, including them.
Well,
that was like an albatross around my neck when I spoke to my son about it.
I'm sure he held that over your head.
The circumstances were different. But if we were to do that again right now, Cousin Mike, we would blow those numbers out the water.
And I also think that there's something to, at Barstool, like, your son is the main mass appeal, but what he needs are like complimentary people and supplementary shows for him to talk about and make fun of and poke fun of and have on his show. And so, it's like it's almost like a sports team where there's like the superstar, but then you need the role players to kind of complete the whole thing. And I think that there's a lot of people at Barstool who do that well.
Yeah. Well, of course, the big argument that I had with my son, and he had it with other people, but of course, I came out on the short end of that. As Zah will attest, I am so far behind. I have no idea about the technical part of any of this. I mean, zero. I know nothing.
It's tough.
I said to my son, I thought we could do better if we got a little help from somebody at Barstool. And he said, nobody gets any help. You got to do this on your own, which was okay to tell somebody that was 18 or 20 years old, but not to tell somebody that's 75.
Yeah, that's
to set this up on your own. That's like telling me, I'll see you later.
Yeah, you're behind the 8 ball on that one. That's tough.
Yeah, so and that's just the way it is. I like to listen, Kevin. I'm glad I heard you this morning. I'm super glad I heard Zara again.
Let me ask you one question while I have you here, because I when I was listening to Dave and Eddie argue about who they think are the most influential people, I was like, they're not talking much about the comedy world, and I know that Dave doesn't really dive into the comedy world much. I think he says he likes Chris Rock, and that's really it. And there's been times where like we've landed guests from the comedy world, or he's had them offered for pizza reviews or even had them on pizza reviews, and he's kind of been like, whatever, like I don't even know who these people are. Meanwhile, they can like sell out arenas and they're wildly popular. Did when he was growing up, or when you guys were watching TV and movies or whatever, was there ever any like comedy talk? Is there a reason why it's not like on his radar as much?
You know, I'm surprised at that, because now we're talking about a long time ago. People, I mean, I always loved people like Rodney Dangerfield.
Right.
If you're asking me whether David knew who that was when he was a kid, I really can't answer that.
I think it's just Larry David and Chris Rock for him are like the only two. I mean, of course he knows who like.
Yeah, Larry
Chappelle
David.
And,
I'll tell you something about Larry David, which a lot of people my age, and another one I still watch PTI, okay?
Yep.
Because I like Kornheiser.
Mm-hmm.
I love Kornheiser. I see a lot of myself. He's much more talented, obviously, don't get me wrong. A lot of the things I think Kornheiser says and Larry David says, things that I think, all right? But I'm not equating myself with them in any way at all, believe me.
No, but that's what I think. That's why I think those guys have success, is especially Larry David with Seinfeld and then Curb, is that it's always everyday stuff and social observations that everybody's been in a situation.
Somebody like me, and they say things that I'm not saying, I could have said that, but I am saying I understand.
Yes.
It's like Chris Rock, that famous thing he did after OJ. He says, I don't agree, but he had that shitty smile on his face.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes. I mean.
And, of course, I love Chris Rock. I mean, these people you're talking about, and that's really why I'm calling, and what you said really rang true with me. These people are not limited to a certain age group.
Nope.
If you paid attention at all, and you're my age, you get it. And I know people younger get it. Now, why David, if he's not paying, it's just because he's not paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I can't speak for him on some of these people if he doesn't think they're good or whatever. I don't know. And I'll tell you something, with Eddie, I love Eddie. I think Eddie does a great job with David because he doesn't take shit from him.
I know there's a very, very short list of people who can host with him, because you need to be able to push back and you need to be able to question him and all that, and Eddie does a great job with that.
Yeah, I've told Eddie several times I think he's doing a great job, and I do. Yeah. I think that show that he does, without Eddie, all right, if he had somebody as a yes man, I think it wouldn't be nearly as good.
No, I mean, we've done that before where like Tommy Smokes and the Team Portnoy guys do it. I love all them, but when it's just like, yes, Dave, yes, you're the funniest Dave, you're the best Dave, I agree with you, Dave. Nobody gives a fuck about that. Nobody wants to hear that.
No good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate the call, and I love
It obviously takes a certain amount of you have confidence in yourself to be able to stand up to him like that.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. What do you know? While I have you here, what do you think of like all of this when it's all said and done? And I don't know, he retires or we sell it or whatever it is. Where I personally don't think Dave will ever be out of the spotlight. He said many times to me before, it's about the money, and I if I have a certain amount of money, I would just retire onto a beach and you never see me again.
He said that
and I'm like, well, you have the money now, and you're clearly not, because I think he loves the attention and loves the influence. So if there is an end somehow, what do what's your whole vibe on this? Like as a father, as a regular guy, as a family man,
If you're talking about David in particular, I know he has said that for a while. I don't know. That's the type of thing, until you're in that situation, you really can't answer that.
Right.
Even he knows what he's saying, but he's not in that situation where when he gets up in the morning, he has absolutely nothing to do.
Cousin Mike,
right?
he once used to say, I believe his number was $10 million. He said, if I have $10 million, I'll just disappear on a beach. I was like,
wait, that was the first churning deal.
I was going to say, that happened real quick. And I think, the thing about it, it's been fast, but it also, some of these things have been fast, but a lot of it has been a slow rise where you continually get more money and you continually raise your ambition to the point that now he has his sights set on bigger things. But like when you look back on it all, would you have how would you sum the whole experience up as a father and as a pseudo employee and all of it?
I always say I'm still even after all these years relative to David and the situation. I mean, as a parent, I mean, in 10 million years, I never envisioned. How could anybody envision what happened to him?
Right.
I mean, not only could I not envision, some of the things that have happened to him are in things that didn't exist. There was no. What am I going to say when he was 20 years? I think he's going to be a big star on the internet.
Right.
I didn't know what the internet was.
Podcasting. Yeah, these words weren't even around. I mean, when you
be very, very popular as a podcaster.
Yeah, if you are, that's an interesting thought, because if you're a parent of a child who is really, really good at sports, you see that and you're like, wait a minute, my kid is better than everyone, and then they get a scholarship and then maybe they go pro, and you can predict that coming because you see their talent, or if they can sing really well, act really well, if they're really beautiful, whatever it may be. But there was really no reason, even late into life, into his 20s, 30s, there was really no reason to ever expect him to be $100 millionaire until all of a sudden it just happened, right?
Right, and something that in an industry that didn't exist 20 years ago.
I mean, it's an industry he made in a lot of ways. I don't want to say that he made the whole thing, but a very big pioneer of it all.
Yeah, and as far as going back to what you said, what will he do when he would get up in the morning and say, I got enough money, blah blah blah. Is he the type of person that's going to say, well, I'm done, I don't have to do anything else? I don't know. He doesn't know. He's actually in that situation.
I think my guess would be, if he makes enough money to buy into a sports franchise, do you think that would be his final thing? Like, I own some horses, I own a part of a team, and now I just sit back and do that.
You know something? I think, though, a lot of people that have made much more money than he has have bought into sports teams, and they have found it not to be what they thought it was going to be.
It is a thing that I think, it's almost like a play toy or a dream for people, and then you do it and you're like, wait a minute, this is not what it's cracked up to be.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Right. Look at Elon Musk. I'm not saying he's not happy, but I mean, here's a guy, I mean, there's things swirling around in his kepi, that's a Jewish word, that keeps him up at night.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it's so cliche, but it's really true that money doesn't buy happiness, and mo money, mo problems, and all those phrases exist for a reason, because the stakes get higher, and the pressure gets tighter, and the enemies start growing, and a lot comes along with it. So. Yeah. But anyway, I'm happy you called in to prove my point. I
want to tell you one other thing before I leave. You won't believe what I'm about to tell you.
Now you can't get rid of it.
In less than an hour, I'm going to be on Dan's show.
Oh, wow. Look at you making the rounds today.
Yeah. He called me. I didn't call him. I go on there occasionally.
All right. Well,
I'm going to be on there today at noon. If anybody wants to listen, I don't care.
All right. Go check out Cousin Mike on PMT. I appreciate the call.
Say hi to Cousin Linda for me, Cousin Mike.
Yeah, say hi to all the family for us, all right?
All right.
Have a good one. The incomparable Cousin Mike, Mr. Portnoy, the best.
What a guy, man.
The absolute best. And I'm happy he called in, because it proves my point that, I was sitting with Josh Richards, and I could ask him about, Dave Chappelle, and I can ask Mr. Portnoy about him, and they can tell you the exact, they know about his TV show and his whole history and his specials and his drama. So that's where I think the one thing, that and guys who are movie stars / like Adam Sandler, those big stars, those guys cross over as well.
That sport analogy that you were using for the Rookie of the Year and MVP and all that. This guy that's sitting on the line, he has one of my candidates for. I'll probably give him. I'll go what? Rookie of the Year, maybe Most Improved. The guy that he's gonna mention.
Jake from New Jersey. Who you got?
How's it going? I got Andrew Schultz as the newcomer.
Yeah, it's a big one, too.
All his money that he makes back into that podcast.
Yep.
He gets a new studio every 2 years or something. They put a lot of effort in. They get new people around. If you saw that new episode they just had with Rogan, it really felt like old school JRE.
They had Rogan on it. I mean, that's crazy because Rogan doesn't do many guest appearances. So for Rogan to be on Flagrant that's a huge one too. Yeah, I mean that was just a few years ago. Flagrant 2 is like, an NBA podcast, basically, talking sports and shit. And now it's turned into Netflix specials and arena tours. And Akash is a huge part of it. He's gotten his own career. My man Kaz was a part of that early days, and now he's branched off into his own career with MSG and the Knicks and everything. So, yeah, that's a powerhouse as well. That's a big internet one. That you can call it Rookie of the Year, but it's also like, it's weird to call anybody a rookie. It's like it's a rookie in the sense of like they blew up this past pandemic or these last couple years. Tim Dillon was a big one that blew up over the pandemic, but they're guys who have been doing it for 10 or 15 years who just now, utilize the internet and pivot in a way that makes them explode like on, a whole other level.
Yeah, and I didn't mean no disrespect by that. I'm a massive I'm a big Schultz fan, but I mean in the context.
Yeah, like in the sense of,
I mean Eddie's been doing it for 40, Schultz has been doing it for 5. He's a rookie.
Yeah. No, I mean it's just the internet. It's the power of the internet, man. Yeah. The people who embrace the internet and use it. That's why I always get a crack out of them. I crack up at them when they talk about Schultz and Dillon and all the guys who are using the internet now as if the internet didn't exist until the pandemic. It's like, yeah, man. Like, they were like, I could go to a theater and sell out, and reach 300 people or 3,000 people, or I could put it on the internet and reach 500,000. Like, yeah. That's the fucking internet. That's the whole point of the internet. The World Wide Web, man. Come on down and join us. It's fucking, jump in. The water's warm and the money is flowing. So those guys are the ones who, have utilized it the best, but it's been sitting there for the taking. Again, that's why I say, like, I love the Barstool story is the internet. There was no, what were you famous from before you got big on the internet? The internet. That's it. We're the children of this shit.
You're a music guy. Who for you in music? So like even music media, music podcasts, even the artists right now, actually.
Yeah,
the most influential.
You know who I think? I love Lil Dicky. I feel like he's branched from music to TV in a way that not many Dave is a
massive
very
over the pandemic.
It is a very funny show. I thought season 1 more than season 2, but they're both good seasons. Like, that's a real TV show. That's not like a gimmick. That's not like, oh, he's trying out this little, like, experiment that they're going to pick up for one season and then cancel. You got Andrew Santino on there, who is, like, a lifelong comic and actor and writer and all that shit. That's a real, like, actual good, very funny comedy. And then, so this popped off on the internet, like, a little while ago. Somebody said Jack Harlow is having the career that Lil Dicky wishes he had. And that made me pause because I love Lil Dicky. I think he's one of the best. He's one of the most talented rappers when it comes to, like, the actual act of rapping. I know he doesn't have the hits and the platinum records and all that shit the same way that you would call the best rappers. But when it comes to lyricism and freestyling and battling and, all the shit that he did, he's one of the best. And I was like, wait a minute, whoa. Like, Lil Dicky's on a level on his own. But Jack Harlow went from, white boy with the curly hair at Rolling Loud to on a track with Lil Wayne and Kanye now, and then real quick pivots to White Man Can't Jump, where he's going to be in, like, a major motion picture. So you got to throw him in the mix of, like, he's a multi-talented.
Now he's got a sandwich. He's got a sandwich at KFC.
Does he?
Oh yeah.
Fucking, how do I not have a goddamn
right?
sandwich at KFC, motherfucker? Goddamn, his initials aren't even the name of your fucking store, KFC.
I've been getting Google notifications about this for the past 2 weeks. Like, I try to track in case you guys pop up in the news, and it's just been Jack Harlow
KFC. Jack, come on the show, dude. You can promote your KFC with KFC. Come on, it's a whole thing. I think he's a big one. I think he has a, like a little Eminem factor where racially you cross over. And young, he's got, the girls, he's got the guys. He can do movies, apparently. I guess we'll see if he can really act. I get the feeling that he's like a funny dude who kind of has like a good sense of humor. So he'll be a huge one. Right now it's funny. The girls have like dominated the rap game and the music game. Like you got like the Doja Cats and the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions. I don't know if they can be on like that mogul level where they, cross over into all these other things. But like Doja Cat was on Dave as an actress. So I think she's kind of like a pop star.
And then on the
media
side of music. I mean, $1 million worth of game.
Oh yeah. Bro, from that point of view, $1 million worth of game. Joe Budden, those guys, like the
last time Wallow was here, we were just chit chatting in the thing, and I mentioned, Burna Boy just dropped a new track, and he's like, oh, we got to get him on the podcast, and I just thought about Burna Boy is.
I mean, for Africa,
he has a billion people listening to him.
I know.
He is a god, and he's just casually like, all right, we need him on that later.
$1 million worth of game has everybody who's anybody in the rap game coming on. We're gonna have Adam 22 in tomorrow from No Jumper. That's a big one as well.
He's also.
Yeah, I feel like Budden, No Jumper, and $1 million worth of game would be like, and Rory and Miles branching off from Joe Budden, the media side of music. There's a lot of good shit in that space. It's just a very interesting time to like be alive as far as who your favorite this or that is, because there's so many of them. All the barriers of entry are down. But all the competition is through the fucking roof. It's the internet. The internet is the most important thing that's ever been fucking invented. Yeah, it is the great equalizer, because all you need is this right here. You got your phone, and that's fucking it, man. Real quick before we get out of here, because I do want to talk about the sports world. LIV Golf.
And I have something for you on that too.
What do you got? It's one of the most interesting things that I think has ever happened in a major sport, because there's been there's the four major sports: basketball, hockey, NBA, NHL, MLB, and the NFL is all like established and set, and those leagues can't be touched. And you try to do, the XFL or the USFL or whatever. You try to do the Big Three basketball league. You try to do World Baseball Classic. You do all these things that just never touch the major leagues. And the PGA Tour has a problem on their hands with these Saudi Arabians who got big fucking bank. What would you put up there before?
There it is.
Multiple reports claiming that. Yep. I mean, dude, Bryson DeChambeau leaving.
Those are the superstars.
Those are monsters. Bryson DeChambeau leaving the PGA Tour is fucking insane. Patrick Reed, he won the Masters, right, or whatever. He was big with the Ryder Cup. These are guys who win majors. Phil Mickelson bouncing. Dustin Johnson bouncing, Kevin Na, I think. I mean, names that I know are all gone. And that means what? Your favorite superstars are just not going to be playing in the Masters? Not going to be playing at the U.S. Open? I mean, these Saudi Arabians rolled in with $1 bajillion, gave it to Greg Norman, and said, go buy everyone. And you know what?
I love it.
I know there are ethical and moral complications with this. You don't think there's ethical and moral complications with the money that comes through the PGA Tour? You don't think there's moral and ethical complications with the corporations in America that sponsor these events? The big banks and the big, corporations that are behind these majors and on these golf courses. Everyone's got dirty money. Now, Saudi Arabians are it's a little harsher.
I don't know about that. The money here is
no. Listen, all money is dirty. All money is covered in blood. I think the problem is that in Saudi Arabia there are blatant still, human rights violations going on with women and minorities and shit. That's just like, we know over there's a way of life that is just in certain cities and certain places. I'm not well versed on all this, but I know that there are women and gay people. Yeah, you're losing hands. You're chopping people down. You're killing people. Like things like that just are not going to fly. But it's okay. So it's a little bit better over here, and you got these guys who are. I'm going to play pro sports for a monster dirty money conglomerate over here, or a monster dirty conglomerate over there. And these guys are going to pay me way fucking more? I don't know. I would like to tell you that I'd be the guy who, does it and makes my money while not backing a country or a group that, marginalizes women and gays and minorities and all that stuff. But I don't know. You don't know what it's like until it's, it's like, how fucking, that now these guys are in it. They know the big scumbags on the PGA Tour. And they know, the money they're getting isn't exactly honorable. And it's like, so then what's the fucking difference? I'll tell you what the difference is. Tens of millions more from these guys over here. And I'm sure they're going to go about it in a way. I don't know the insides of it, but I would imagine this is kind of like the XFL, where they're going to make golf cool and new and young and exciting. So you get like a new fun version of your sport you love, plus more money, and you don't have all the like the bullshit, like hoity-toity, stick-up-your-ass stuff from the PGA. And it's like, I don't expect Bryson DeChambeau, one way or the other, Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Reed and Phil Mickelson and shit are not going to change the culture in the Middle East, okay? Whether they play golf for the PGA or not, or they play golf for the Saudi Arabian conglomerate, they're still going to be chopping hands off, and they're still going to be doing, human rights violations. So is it really on them? I don't know. That's an ethical debate that you got to have about sports and role models and all that kind of shit. I don't think that, it's necessarily their problem or their issue to fix. Also, you would like to maybe say that they should take that on and be a good example and all that shit. I'll tell you what I would do if I was sticking around with the PGA. Because if either my bread is buttered by the PGA, if I'm one of these guys who's getting all the money in the world, or, I don't know, for whatever reason, if you're locked in with the PGA, I would be beating that drum. I'd be like, well, look at me. I'm a good guy. They're the bad guys. I would be playing that up to the fucking maximum. I'm Tiger Woods or something like that. I'd be like, well, I'm sticking around here because I, for one, don't agree with what happens to, women over in the Middle East. Like, I would ride that to the fucking all the way to the top, because if these guys are going to just bounce and get their money and not have to deal with any of the – I mean, Dustin Johnson got asked those questions, and he was just like, I don't know, I'm just doing what's best for my family. Whatever, next question. It's like they're gonna get forced. They're gonna get these questions asked, like, well, what do you have to say about what happens to women over there in Saudi Arabia? And they're gonna go, I don't know, I'm not really, well informed on that. I'm just here to play golf and provide for my family. Boom, done. Next question.
That's it. And that's literally all
it's
about.
A shame. Like, yeah, would we love to live in a perfect world where Dustin Johnson stands up and says, no, that's a travesty, and while I'll be playing, I'll also be fighting, blah, 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 But that's not going to happen. These guys are, you forget, and you like to think that athletes are role models and heroes and they do the right thing. And at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are fucking prima donnas or assholes or cocky, arrogant dudes who have just been competing their whole lives and thinking about themselves and their money and their own, and that's it. And so I just don't judge one way or the other. I see the problems with it. I get it. It's, I know that when WWE has events over in Saudi Arabia for these guys, these private events for these big-time bigwigs, oil money people, they're kind of always like, well, wait a minute, why are you entertaining them? Why are you taking their money? Golf's going to go through it. I think any time – it's called sports washing, where you use sports to, change your reputation, or, look at us, we're not bad guys, we golf. And it's a very blatant and transparent attempt to try to, like, rehabilitate your image or whatever. I don't even know if they're doing that here. I think they're just like, fuck it. We want to dominate the golf world. I don't think they're trying to, like, be something they're not. I think Saudi Arabia doesn't give a fuck. It's just a matter of you're expecting these golfers to care, and they don't. They fucking don't. I mean, I hate to go back to it, but it's like, the way we started the show. It's like there are much more pressing and terrible issues. Again, I don't like to compare, one to the other. I shouldn't do that. But if people aren't caring about fucking kids being shot, they're certainly not going to care about shit going on halfway around the world that they can't fix one way or the other. They're just worried about playing golf and making money. Would you take it if no question,
fucking brainer. Let me tell you something. I do things. I live for myself and myself first.
Yep.
My family.
Yep.
That's it. And I don't blame any one of these guys once 100 million's on the table.
But what if I said you can make? So Phil Mickelson signed for like $200 million or something, right? Okay. So that's a number that you can't refuse. Yeah. I understand that. It's going to start to trickle down. What if I told you you can go to LIV Golf for $10 million or the PGA Tour for $3 million?
$10 million.
What about 10 versus 5?
10.
What about 10 versus 6?
Morals, here's the thing. No one on the earth says morals. The whole us feeling bad, us whatever. It's for me. It's all about this.
Now, okay, so maybe you're not doing it for the moral reasons. What if I told you could have $7 million from the PGA Tour and not have any drama in your life, or you have 10 million from LIV and you got to answer these questions everywhere you fucking go. And every time you hit the golf course, there are women saying, "Hey, are you cool with, people like me getting my hands chopped off over there? Hey, are you cool with what happens to marginalized groups over,
I have to, okay, so that's where the issue comes, because the money does come from someone, so you have that influence of where you have to do that. So
yeah, it's like at the end of the day, the guys cutting your checks are horrific to people who look like you, to women, you know what I mean? Like, and if you can, I mean, I'm cool. A lot, trust me, I'm cool with a lot of it too. Like, a lot of it is like, well, that's not really. I'm on this earth for a small amount of time for me and mine, and I really can't fix all the world's problems. But when your money comes directly from people who are not good,
let me phrase it this way. Let me be careful about how I say it and phrase it this way. The people that I don't like are the guys that are going after these guys for accepting the Saudi money based on the human rights, using the human rights as the main reason.
Sure.
Those are the people that I don't like.
Because there's a lot of high horse shit going on right now. A lot of holier than thou. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing to fix all these problems? Nothing. You're just here for the headlines and the drama and all that.
But in that situation, I'll take the 7 without having to answer the questions.
I do think there
Once
is.
it evens out, I don't want to answer the question.
But the problem is right now, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but I don't think anybody on the PGA Tour, aside from Tiger and the top dogs, are making tens of millions, hundreds of millions.
Night and day, bro.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's like, okay, I'm doing 10 versus 7. What about like 2 versus 135?
No-brainer.
And then the PGA must be like, we just can't compete because we just don't have fucking Sultan money to throw at these guys, nor would we.
And also, I mean, the dominoes falling this fast. I mean, I'm guessing this is probably easier money than
like
PGA money.
Like this. I mean, like that. And it really goes to show, because golf is if you were to try to field an entire football league, you need hundreds and hundreds of people. You need to put together a golf tour. You need like 20 guys that are good, and then a bunch of other scrubs to fill out, and you're good to go. So it's a rare sport. You could probably do it with tennis too. But it makes you wonder that, like, if somehow, some way, I don't know, let's say Japan and their baseball league all of a sudden just threw buckets of money at MLB players, would they just be like, yeah, all right, I'll go play in Tokyo? It's hard to imagine that because Mike Trout's already making $400 million. But what if all of a sudden someone in Japan said, we'll give you $750 million? Would they be like, yep, I'm gone, peace?
So did these guys, how does the golf world work? Did these guys have contracts with the PGA, or they had like a membership? It's a membership, right? Because you don't have years that you're locked in.
What I read, at least, was if you leave the PGA Tour for this, you are banned from the PGA Tour.
Okay, so it's a membership. It's not. It's you can leave at any point.
I think you can leave at any
point. They're not
point.
Buying the players from the PGA.
I don't believe. Yeah. It's not like it's not like a contract that they own. But I think it's like you have a right to play on our courses, and now you don't. That's the other thing is, in baseball and football and basketball, if you are competitive and you want to be the biggest and the best, you have to play against the best. In golf, you're playing against the course.
Yeah, it's the course.
It's like, so yeah, if Mike Trout wouldn't go play in Japan, because it's like, well, I'm going to be playing against inferior competition my whole career. No one's going to care or remember. But in golf, it's like, whether I'm playing on a 7,000-yard course made by the PGA or made by LIV Golf, it's, the same entertainment value, the same competition, the same legacy, the same everything. It's all going to be equal, except these guys are paying me tens of millions more.
You are CEO of Rolex, and you just cut the PGA Tour a massive check. You must be fuming right now,
Furious. Because that's the other domino that's going to fall.
The sponsors.
Is the sponsors are going to go, well, I'll tell you what, like, we're already in bed with a lot of fucking, questionable shit, like, globally. I also want Bryson DeChambeau to be pushing my cars or my, whatever else. So they swept in and did it with the quickness. And I know Greg Norman is like, I think he's like the head of it, kind of. He was like the main recruiter.
Bro, his nickname was the Shark.
The Shark, exactly, dude. He's the Shark. And when they ask him questions, he's like, well, things are complicated. It's just like, at the end of the day, what's the difference? Good guys, bad guys, we're all just here to play golf. What's the deal?
I love it. Golf's changed overnight, just like that.
It's become, in my mind, skyrocketed to the top by miles, the most important, the most interesting sports league to talk about now. The difference between the pay and the PGA Tour and LIV Golf is the same difference in interest I have. Who's going to win the NBA championship? What are the Mets doing? What are Cohen doing? Leaves it in the dust. The golfers just being like, peace. We don't give a fuck about you. Cash rules. Money talks. Goodbye. I don't care who's writing me checks. I don't care if they're good guys, bad guys, if they're super villains, if they're murderers. Money's green. I'll go play on their greens too. It is one of the more. It's moral. It's financial. It's sports. It's competition. It's got it all. Dude.
So like, where are they playing? In Saudi Arabia?
I don't know. Don't think it matters. I would be interested if they have a presence in America like right away. If they're going to be playing on American courses. If you have to go over, that's another thing. I don't know if you had to go like live or play constantly in the Middle East. That would weigh on me a little bit. But I'm sure you go to Dubai or whatever. You live like a fucking king. It's
They're going to be playing here. They're going to rent these golf courses that they play the Masters and all that, and there's a big fuck you to the PGA. They literally might follow the path that the PGA goes on. That'll be great.
These stuck-up fucking old school dinosaurs. We can't be beat. We can't be stopped. We're the gold standard. No one can compete with us. Oh, yeah? Well, you just lost like half of all your top golfers. Boom. Goodbye.
LIV rents out fucking Augusta.
That's going to be great. Because at the end of the day,
it's all about the money. And they'll pay double the Masters pace.
Easy money, dude. And Augusta's down with like, oh, what? You only like certain types of people? So do we. It ain't, again, the good guys, in this, there ain't no good guys. There are no good people in this world. There are rich people and poor people. There are winners and losers. There's no good and bad.
I need them hiring Paul Heyman to come out and just
hell yeah
WWE for his WWF again.
Dude, that's exactly what this is.
Just get a mouthpiece out there to really be like, fuck you, we're better than you.
Yep.
Just crush them.
This is WCW versus WWF versus ECW, but one guy just came out and trumped and crushed every fucking buddy. And by the way, as I say that one word, there's one person left that we didn't mention who's an influential media force, and it's the Donald brother. You want to talk about one guy,
the biggest,
who branches everything,
the biggest,
the number one, who's just been again laying in the cut, hasn't done much recently, needs to bide his time and pick his spot. You talk about all these other accomplishments I was mentioning. Who has the most money? Who sells the most merch? Who sells the most tickets? Blah blah blah. There's one dude who became the president using that influence. So there's the king of all of this shit. Like it or not, it doesn't matter where you fall. You got to acknowledge that one. So, all right, let's wrap it up today. I'll take one more call as we always do. I got my man Corey in New York. Out of all these people that I've mentioned today, is there anyone missing from the list of influential people you might want to add on there?
Well, I'm putting you at number one, of course.
Why is that?
Because you're the most underrated genius in the world.
My man. We'll catch you next week on the Kevin Clancy Show.